Hello everyone, welcome back to the Plunder Den. In this week's episode, we're going to be building a lighthouse. So this really is an extension of the previous project I was working on for Trey Parker. So I was building an entire seaport for Blood and Plunder. And in that first part, we built a tavern. It was a fully playable tavern, it had multiple floors. And I wanted to carry that over into a lighthouse. So I've never built that on the channel, and I figure a good seaport would have a lighthouse. So this lighthouse I built is kind of, that time frame they didn't actually quite use mirrors. Mirrors weren't commonly used in lighthouses for probably about 40 years after the golden age of piracy. So lighthouses back then would have had wood on a stone tower of some sort covered in oil, and they would have burned wood on oil, and that would be it's not as effective, obviously. The mirrors really changed, the game changer for lighthouses, essentially. Not saying they didn't use that in the past, because there's some records of ancient where they polished metal and stuff like that. But at the time of the golden age of piracy, they would have used simple lighthouses with just wood and fire. Some of the oldest examples are still off the coast of France, but a lot of them got converted during the Napoleonic Wars. They got converted into communication towers to signal, where the British fleet was and enemy fleets were on the coastlines. So there's not too many of those lighthouses still intact, so we've got an idea of what they actually kind of looked like. But they kind of had a hexagon shape. And of course, I've embellished a little bit on there, made it a little bit larger, made it a little more interesting. I didn't want to just have a straight up, plain old hexagon-shaped tower. So let's just say I played with history a little bit just to make it a little more interesting and more fun to play with. Now, I made this thing completely playable, so all the floors, all the way through the tower. And I'll show you. We're going to go over the table. I can't show you right here on the screen because it's so large. We're just going to go over to the game table and I'll pull it apart for you and show what we're going to build on this channel today. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a longer episode, mainly because there's so many components. And it's been quite a while since I released an episode, mainly because this project was very complicated and I wanted to complete it. So maybe the best thing is to just go over the table and let's check it out. Okay, so let's walk through the Plunder Den here. We're going to head over to the game table. I have a seaport set up here, and there is the lighthouse all completed. And I just wanted to go take a walk through it and show you what we're going to be building today. So the actual finished port that I'm going to build for Trey Parker, the lighthouse is a part of it, and that tavern. But as I mentioned in the intro, there's other components that we're going to be building over the next few episodes to complete this table. So I'm going to take the top off. You can see there's an opening that I've created on there. And to get down to the staircase, I wanted each level to be playable. And, you can actually stick your hand in this section. I didn't want to add too many sections in there because you can't get all the way down to the bottom. So that's why I split it up into different sections on the way up. And, I just put my miniature in there just so you can see the scale and what it looks like. I wanted to make sure the stairs were, playable, as I like to do. So this is a track system that I built to connect the two pieces together. And what I've changed now is, normally I would just have those little bits hanging out. But what I've changed is I've added balsa wood in between those bits. So really the piece slides onto it much better. So here's the base, and we got some doors I've added, compartments leading down to it's kind of like the keep or the main portion of the base of the lighthouse that you can get in there. So this tower part is similar to the one we just looked at, but then you get down into the base here, and you got a couple staircases, probably 2 levels there to get down to the floor level. I did add this balcony to the side here, just to add interest and gameplay. You can shoot from that balcony on the one side of the lighthouse. Just makes it more interesting. And then, of course, the thatched roof comes off. And this would be like the residence, the person that's the lighthouse keeper would live in there. So I wanted to make sure I added that. And that's really the entranceway into the whole piece itself. So that's all the different components that we're going to be building to complete this project and to make this entire terrain piece playable. So you can see there's quite a few components to this project, and that's what made it really complicated to build. It took a long time to actually plan it all out. And, you know, the consideration of making it fully playable interior. And what it was, it's a lighthouse, so it's complicated to figure out how I was going to make it playable inside of a tower. You know, made sure those pieces were big enough so you can stick your hand in and move your miniatures in. Those are all kind of things that I had to consider, and how it's connected to the bottom, and where should I break it so, you know, you can play in different areas. And remember, my buildings are kind of like a ship in Blood and Plunder, where you have different decks. Well, this building would have different sections, and it would play out the same way, similar to a ship. You would have to fight into a deck or fight into a component in the building. So gameplay was definitely a consideration in this. And some of these projects, you know, like we look at the tavern and now the lighthouse, like you could have whole missions like just inside of these terrain pieces, which is kind of what I wanted. I mean, you could, it's going to really add a lot of dynamics to the table, and it'll be an epic table when we're done. Lots of fun to be played on there, lots of missions that can be done. And that's what I was shooting for. Now, looking into the future, so today we're going to build a lighthouse, but future projects for this entire game table, of course I have to build the tiles that the whole game table is on. So you got, some of it's going to be sea components, some of it will be, you know, city streets, so there'll be some cobble roads and stuff like that. And some of it's a dock area, because I want to build a warehouse and a market and kind of a crane area, so something like that, where the ships are, that would be in a seaport, that would be important. And, you know, some kind of like, maybe a city street block of like 3 or 4 houses or buildings or something, just to fill out the cityscape so it's completely full. When you looked at the map there, I had other buildings. Those are from other projects that I built. But I want to do a fresh set for this particular project. And you know, maybe some kind of stone fort. I kind of had this idea of having a prison in there, and you have to prison break some of your pirates, and I thought that would be a really cool concept to add to this overall table. So I got a lot of ideas. I really want this to be fantastic and really amazing thing to play on. So I really kind of want to build all these different components on there. And we're going to do, you know, each episode's going to be a different component, and we'll get through them all and to see the whole table built. So I'm really excited to share all those different projects with you. All right, so that's pretty much it. If you guys like what we're doing here in the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information when I start these kind of projects. All right, everyone, let's get down to the table and start doing some painting, and let's start doing some crafting. So we're going to start off, as I always do, going through some of the supplies we're going to use for this project. So we got our larger balsa wood. Just so you know, I got that from Amazon. This company here that has all sorts of different sizes of different balsa wood. I was able to get some more balsa wood from Michael's, actually, craft store. Started carrying back in the store again, which is totally awesome. You got matchsticks. We got our willow fencing that we're going to use for our docked area. And we got some crafting wire. This is also from the dollar store. Dollar store foam board, of course. We're going to need a lot of that. We got our insulation foam for our stonework. And I believe this one is a 1/2 inch. I use 1/2 inch and 2 inch. So there's two different, 1/2 inch and 1 inch in size. And then here's our coffee stirrers. Now I got these from Amazon. They come in box of 1,000. And what I like about these ones is they already have texture on them. So if you watch my videos in the past, you could see I was using a little hobby knife to add texture to those popsicle sticks and stuff. But coffee stir sticks are a better scale and they have texture. Some drywall compound. We got our party streamers that we're going to use for our thatched roof. We got some regular sand here. And we got some little black stones. All these gravel and stones you get from the dollar store. But I think I got these 2 jugs from Michael's. But just get whatever you can find, sand or rocks. So this is really the start of the planning stage. So I always start with the base and figure out how big this is going to be. Use my miniature always as, and I use this French Commander because he's probably the largest miniature that they have for Firelock games. So I figure if the doorways and stuff can fit his big hat in there, I'm probably good. But I kind of know I wanted to have a walkway and a balcony in the side. I wanted to build some kind of dock system that comes off the front. And it's kind of got that kind of a keep that is the base of the lighthouse. So once I've determined that, I'm going to cover this whole thing with black craft paint. I was like, why did I draw a pencil on there? But you can actually see it once the paint dries. You can still see the pencil on there and where everything is. As you can see there, you can still see the pencil after the paint dries. And I put black paint on there just so it doesn't get any warping. So now I'm building the walls. This is just dollar store foam board. Kind of figured out what kind of heights. I always measure. You can see the width of the board there. So that's the wall. So I make sure I measure everything properly when I glue it on. And always using my miniature as a reference. This French Commander just kind of hovers around so I can make sure I'm staying in the right scale for what I want to do. So here me checking the doorway. Now, I ended up having to cut that doorway a little bit higher because I forgot I was going to raise the floor. So that was the only little boo-boo I did at the beginning here. But I fixed it by just raising all the floors and cutting that roof a little bit, that opening a little bit bigger. So I've added some windows in there. And just so you know, I left the paper on the inside still on. Just adds more strength, as you can see here. And I textured the outside. I did something a little different this time. I left a little bit of the paper on there, just to make it look like there's something growth onto the actual. Just adds a little texture more to it. So there could be some moss or something growing on this lighthouse base. So again, just measuring everything out, make sure everything's right. Like I said, I make that doorway a little bigger, and I always hot glue these components on. It's too hard to do with white glue. You have to let it dry. They don't sometimes dry straight. If you hot glue it in place, it's in place. And then you start adding your wooden components. So this is balsa wood. And I start framing the corners first. And this just adds a lot of strength to the overall piece. And just things to glue, so you can glue your walkways and stuff too. You need to start adding posts in here to add some strengths in here. And so you can build your second floors. So I'm just showing you where I'm going to frame out the inside, the outside, and kind of start setting the foundation. So this is what I mean by raised floor. Because this is actually in the water, and it's like an island, I want it to have it a little more raised. So you can see I'm starting to add supports to the very top. This will make sure that the foam is not, it adds the strength to it. You still have that paper on the one side, but then you're adding all these wooden balsa wood to it to add strength. Now you could add more Mod Podge to your paint and add more strength that way. And I don't think I ended up doing that because there's so much wood that I've added on here that you've added so much strength. Once you put this craft paint on there, it is really solid. And I kind of made this framing system on the bottom. It's more of a design, kind of like it's raised above the water. And I was planning on adding some gravel in there to add some weight. But first of all, I'm going to kind of frame out these windows or little slits in the wall there that people can shoot through. So I wanted to add a little bit of framing to that. And, of course, I want to frame the corners. Mainly to hide the cut foamed areas and just seal that in so it looks finished. And again, we're adding more strengths by every step where we add more wood to the whole piece. It just adds more and more strengths. So this is what I talk about the gravel. I'm going to put it in these little compartments here I've made, and really this is for weight. So I'm making a tall tower, right? So I want to add a little bit of weight to the bottom. This will add more strength to the whole piece. And really I just put some white glue in there and then threw some sand and gravel in there. And that let it dry, and it becomes really solid. Like this. So you got a nice little variety in there. And then I'm going to seal it in with some black craft paint. Now, again, you could add some Mod Podge in there if you want to add a little more strength. And you can go ahead and do that. It'll definitely help. But I felt because of the amount of wood that I put in there, I didn't really need to go that extra mile. There's enough strength in there. And you'd be surprised that gravel and white glue, when it dries, how solid it becomes. So now I need to make some stones. You've probably seen me do this on the channel umpteen times. And yes, I probably should get a Proxxon cutter and save myself time. But I do still like the randomness of just taking my open knife and cutting them into these different shapes. Sticking it in my old coffee tin with rocks. And I shake it up for about 4 minutes. And you get it out and they come out really good. I'll have a plate here just to show you in a minute here. Yeah, right here. So this is what they look like after I've shook them up. Sorted the rocks out, and now I'm ready to go. And I just really want to glue in the walls now with the stonework. So I just got my white tacky glue, and we are going to glue that on. Now, of course, that takes some time because they're individual bricks. But I like the look of individual bricks better than just carving it into the foam. I don't know, it just looks more realistic this way. And I always say it's somewhat satisfying laying all those bricks in there. So this is after I've completed all that work. And you can see I needed quite a few bricks to get this main floor done. Probably the biggest area of bricks. So then I started framing out where the actual house would be that's attached to the base of the lighthouse. I got some large balsa wood posts here. And we're going to just kind of make a basic square. You can see I started to add framing to the wall. And that's kind of where the roof is going to sit on. So I'm kind of like staging that already. This is just balsa wood. Different sizes. Like I have 3 or 4 different sizes of balsa wood that I use for framing the whole piece. And just use white tacky glue to glue all this together. You know, balsa wood with white tacky glue, it's really strong when it dries. It's a lot of strength to it. So just taking one more look on the inside. Now we're moving to framing the roof. So I kind of got my opening, and I'm just going to use this little balsa wood here to make little trusses here out of balsa wood. But I'll make a framing first, but I'm going to match that kind of archway that I've added to the wall to make my roof. So this is kind of how I built my trusses. So you can see I just got like a pointed in the middle, double reinforced it with to keep them nice and straight. And then I'm going to make these angled for the roof. I'm just showing you us where it's going, but we all know where it's going. So this is after I've completed that. And I've just used white tacky glue. Now, it's not just enough framing to give some strength, so we're going to add another layer in here. And that's what I'm showing here. We're just going to, you have to cut them individually, unfortunately, but because we want it to stay flush, so you can put that white foam board on top of it, right? So I'm always going back and forth and checking it. Make sure it's not too tight. It's too hard. We should be able to easily get it in and out. So that's why I kept testing that. But what you got to consider when you're doing this is you're going to add some thickness once you add paint to it. So always keep that in mind when you're building this. It'll get a little thicker after you add the paint. I made a little foam front because it's kind of like a stone front. Once the thatched roof's on top, I wanted that front facing of the roof to look like it's some stonework to match the actual lighthouse. And we're just going to make like a wooden structure in here. I think that would be more appropriate for the Caribbean. So we're just going to have kind of like a little house that's attached with wood. But we're going to surround it with lots of like docks and posts and stuff like that to protect it. So you'll notice in this project I do a lot of stages of paint where I build something, then I paint it, then I build something and paint it, just to add strengths and at different levels at different times. And when it gets really tricky is when we get into the tower, and I'll explain that as we go there. But again, I'm just framing out the house portion of the lighthouse. But I want to leave that doorway open because I want to do that walkway on the side of the building. So I kind of laid a foundation for that that fits within the the level I've gotten. As I was building this, I wasn't even sure how it was going to look, right? I would just kind of, I kind of build things as I go. And like I said, sometimes I build myself into a corner. But you got to build yourself out of the corner. And then I'm just showing you here, I'm just going to lay all the planks down. You always want to do block down first, so if there's any gaps between any of the boards I put down, you won't be able to see like white board underneath it. It'll just be black gravel underneath, which is fine. So I'm just showing you that I'm going to have to do a top piece for that. That's the next level we're going to do. But we're going to get all this wooden planks first. Starting to build the... and I would kind of hummed and hawed about how to build the docks out front. And then I ended up just doing an extension of what was on the house. And we're just going to put some planks on that to make it look like docks out front. And again, going back to the black craft paint as we go. As we build things and attach it. Then I paint it and seal it in. So it's all, but I make sure I'm done in that area first before I go ahead and seal it completely. All right, so this is after I've completely covered everything in black craft paint. Everything's nice and sealed, and I kind of want to have like docks, but like a barrier around it using these willow fencing. So it's kind of like a wall protecting from the water splashing onto the docks, and I kind of had this idea of like bundling them in that hobby wire, similar to the corners of docks, right? But they have a bunch of them built together, maybe like on a pier to protect it. So it's kind of like a pier more than like docks. So that's kind of the look I was going for. So I was going to put like tons of them on the side here. So it's like a protective barrier to protect this house from rising oceans or water spilling over from the shoreline. So they came up with this kind of concept. And it kind of looks neat. I just wanted to, it's more like a fortification, but it's not really. It's kind of like a pier. It is a lighthouse, so. And then I wasn't going to do that on the outside here. I really wanted some stonework, some jagged stones. I had some idea of maybe doing like a whole board of just jagged stones everywhere and like kind of where you have to sail through these rocky shorelines. But I definitely wanted to add some rocks to the front of this building. So I just this is insulation foam. This is 1 inch. Cut it into big chunks like this at a triangle kind of shape, but a little different on each one. And I rolled in with some 1/2 inch that I'm going to use for the smaller stones. And really, I'm not going to put any real stones in the front. It's going to have all foam stones. Now, we've already added weight by adding that gravel to the bottom, so the base is really solid and won't tip over with the tower on it. It wouldn't anyways because the base is so wide, but I wanted to add that extra strength by putting that weight in there. So here we go. This is really just cutting the shapes in there, just taking my hobby knife and pencil and whatever I can find to make the shapes I wanted. But you can see I kind of wanted all the rocks to kind of go in a slant. So it looks like they're all jagged coming out of the one side. And this is what I came up with. I thought it would be appropriate for the front of the lighthouse. I wanted it to be sunken into the rocks. And I added a little bit to the side, into the whole piece. Now that entranceway leading up to the next level, this is a really thick piece of balsa wood that I'm going to use to have my balcony here on the outside. I kind of want to build it within the areas here. But before I do that, I want to lay down my drywall compound to the outer edges. That's going to add my water texture. So I like to use this drywall compound. It's kind of firing up on all the sides. I use my huge miniatures little palette knife here. And I'm just going to kind of make it like there's water splashing up on the rocks. And it's not really important right now, but when we get to the painting stage, it'll give me good texture so I can put my white paint on there that looks like water crashing on the stones. So I kind of did that by adding the drywall compound and let it dry. So that's what I was illustrating. I used that tool to kind of get that motion on the rocks. So it kind of completes that whole area. So once I've done all that, we're going to need to seal this all in with some black craft paint. So I'm just showing you after I've completed it. I'm going to get this and seal it in. You want to seal it in right away because we have all those little bits because I made it look like it's water. You want to make that hardened, otherwise it'll just chip off and fall off. So we got to get that craft paint on there as soon as possible. And I kind of left the area white there a little bit because that's where I plan on gluing everything. But you can see after I went in and painted it and glued all those large balsa woods in there. And this is just coffee stir sticks. So I'm kind of, obviously the balcony can't be that skinny. So I got to make it a little bit wider. I'm going to add some coffee starter sticks like this. And I decided to make this like fenced wall that kind of matches the rest of the kind of the dock area. But it walls in the staircase leading to the balcony. And you can see I use the track system, which I've done before on our winter terrain. I kind of use that track system now and just glue in the pieces of coffee stir sticks. And this is after I've completed it already. I've kind of sealed in where they meet each other, because you don't want to have it open like the water spilling in there. So I kind of just sealed that all off, and then again going back and forth, adding black craft paint. Now you're probably wondering that I have the roof going along with us. I didn't kind of really mention it, but as I'm building this whole piece, the roof is getting painted as we go. And this is all after I've completed everything, I fabricated everything, and I wanted to seal it all in with craft paint. So then I started moving into framing the inside. So I got to make this second level. So you're going to take the staircase, which I'm going to use this large balsa wood to make a staircase, and get to the next level. And I got to make it the right height so you can shoot through those little holes there, slots in the wall, kind of like a castle. So you have to, that's how the height I kind of measured it at. And it worked out good. It was just 2 of those large balsa woods, and you're good for a staircase leading up. And then, of course, I have to seal it in with more coffee stirs to kind of complete the walkway. But I did paint it black first. Again, sealed it in. There's a staircase I built. I painted that black paint. Everything's sealed in now. And we're going to move on to undertones. Now, I can't put all the pieces in there before I paint everything, because once I can't get underneath the walkway once I put it on. So I actually have to complete the entire undertones first before we move on to any more construction. So this is my Piblo, and we got our Barker Brown, Real Brown, we got Camel, and a Yellow Ochre there. Those are all the colors I use for my base. Camel's more for the stonework. After I've added all those undertones. So add those 3 colors first, then add the camel and the stones, and then we add the yellow ochre mixed with some of that real brown, and then I use yellow ochre on its own to highlight it. And that's really what I use to paint a lot of my terrain, really. So it's going to fit in that world. We're not going to add details to the very end where we actually go back with craft paint. But this is what I was able to get with just those colors of craft paint. So you can pretty well get pretty far along in the painting process with just those colors. They're really good earth tones, and I said I like to add them to all my terrain. It gives everything like it belongs in the same world. So that's why I use the same undertones on everything. Now you can change colors. I'm planning on making the walls a little bit whiter because it's a lighthouse. But you can see you can get quite a bit with just that undertones. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time painting, showing you me putting the paint on, let's just say. Mainly, this video would be just super long. And I have done several painting tutorials where I've actually painted the whole thing on the video. So there's some other ones where I've done weathering of buildings, and even the way I paint my ships is done the same way, where there's a more in-depth painting tutorial, so you can see how I actually apply the paint. It's mostly with a large paintbrush, and I kind of do it like a dry brush, and then I move to a smaller brush going down. So this is, once I've done all that painting, now I can actually start putting some planks in there. But the problem is I can't paint the bottom of the plank, so I'm going to use this hardened leather speed paint, and I'm going to paint the bottom of that, and then I'm just going to glue them in place. So you can see it's kind of, the paint's oozing a little bit out of the boards there. But now I can go ahead and actually do the regular paint, my craft paint, on the walkway itself. Now you can see I've kind of made kind of like a fence around it so the miniatures don't fall out. So when you put your miniatures on that walkway, they stay on there. So that's another reason why. And it adds a nice little, something into the interior, make it a little more interesting, right? I'm trying to make this as interesting as possible. I said I do want to make an episode where I make accessories for all these buildings and stuff like that, but right now it's just the basics. This is a staircase. It's really, the core of it's a large balsa wood with coffee stir sticks, kind of just making kind of like a framing around it. And there you go. You got your little staircase. Leads to the next level. So I've scaled it out perfectly so it fits right where that hole is. So you can still shoot through that hole and then climb up the staircase. That leads to the next level up, the main level. So this is after I went ahead and did all those same colors I did before. I did on the staircase and on the walkway, and I'm kind of reviewing it again, but we just covered all the colors, real brown, bark brown, Pueblo, yellow ochre, and we went ahead and finished that walkway. Now, before I got too far, I used, this is willow fencing and some coffee stirs, and just some scrap wood I had around. I keep every little bit of wood from every project I've ever done, and I just glued it to make kind of like a rougher door, because it matches more of the rustic look of the house that's attached to the lighthouse, and not so much more like a keep, more like just a Caribbean house that's attached to it, essentially. So now I'm working out how we're going to work out the thatched roof on this, on our little trusses here. So I kind of changed it up a little bit. So I've done party streamers before, a lot of medieval houses, but I just used it on a flat piece of dollar store foam board. But this time I decided to take all the paper off and carve into both sides. So when you take the roof up, it looks like there's a thatched roof on the bottom and there's a thatched roof on the top. Now I'm going to add the streamers over top of this, but because there's a texture there, when I found when I had it on the flat, there's some sections of the roof that was completely flat, and it kind of lost the illusion. So I kind of added texture on it, so I'm going to glue it to that. And then even if there's gaps, you'll still see texture underneath, and it'll be a more convincing thatched roof. I love party streamers because of the texture on it. And that's what we're going to glue to this rooftop. But we're going to seal it in with black paint first before we do anything crazy on there. This is after I've carved them, and I've put black craft paint on them, both sides, so they don't warp, nice and straight. I mean, we're going to glue it to that top anyways. It's not going to really go anywhere. But you can see it fits nicely there. And then we're going to add the party streamers to the top of that. But I'm going to glue it to the truss first. And then, of course, it fits in that. I measured it all, make sure it fits underneath that ledge on the keep. So this is the party streamers. I just get the party streamers, and I kind of cut a little section of the top off. And then you can see I just use my scissors, and you can do several pieces at the same time and just give it kind of like a skirt, and just cut it up like a grass skirt. And then you glue them on. Now, if you watch the medieval buildings that I built in the past, I did an actual episode just on the thatched roof, on those medieval farmhouses, and I showed you how I apply it. So even if you watch the bakery video, I show you how to do the thatched roof there. But again, I changed it by adding that texture to the dollar store foam board, which I think is a better result. And then I added a little. You need something to pull the roof off with, so I added that little piece of balsa wood there as more like a handle. So this is the next level. I wanted to go with a hexagon shaped tower, but you can see I didn't make it a full hexagon. So there's some small sides and some large sides, and I kind of just wanted to make it look a little more narrow, so it's not so big and chunky. So I kind of changed it a little bit, and you can see I've cut all the pieces out for the full height of the tower, but I plan on cutting those in half for the two different sections because I want to split it up into sections. But this first one is going to have the base and, of course, the opening to the staircase down below. I made sure I stand my miniatures in there, so in the second step, the miniature can stand up straight and their head sticking out the hole there. So you want to make it big enough so they can do that. And then I started cutting the doorways and windows in the first level of the tower. And you can see I cut them at an angle so they glue into each other nicely. So the larger pieces, I left them straight, and the smaller ones, I cut that little angle to them so they fit nice and tight into each other. And you get a nice shape to the whole tower. So, and I've also added the window slits in there as well. Just so you can shoot through the tower all the way up. so different levels. And I decided to go with 3 on the main base, and I'm showing you here, we're going to texture the one side and leave the paper on the inside. Same thing as the base, because we want to have it kind of like a stucco look to it to the outside, and then we want the bricks that we're going to glue in there on the inside. So that's kind of what it looks like right now after I've glued it. And again, I hot glued those in. Don't try to white glue that. You'll freak out. It's too hard. Just use your hot glue. Glue it all together. And then come back just like the base with some framing. We're going to frame up all the walls. We got a lot of angles in there now because it's the hexagon shape. And we're going to have to cover all that. And then on the outside, I went ahead and used coffee stirrers. Just showing you the inside framing. So you can see there's a lot of frame. It adds a lot of strength to the overall piece. Frame out the opening to the next level. And then here's the coffee stirrers. We're going to get 2 per corner. So you cover the whole corner. And then all the way around, all around the base of it too. Adding all those extra supports in there to add strength. This is after I've done framing it all out. So in really good shape now. And at this point, it is very strong. But of course, we're going to add craft paint and to it, which is going to make it even stronger. But at this stage, things are going along really good. It's really strong. So once that black paint's dried, it's time to do some more brickwork. So it was a little trickier, but the idea was that I could stick my hand in there and play miniatures in there. So there was enough room to go in there and still glue my bricks in at this stage. Now, I contemplated leaving half the tower open and glue some of the bricks in, but I changed my mind. I just put it all together and went in there and suffered. It wasn't bad. I just spread the glue around with a brush, and then you can stick your hand in there and put the bricks in there individually. So you can see I added a framing around the whole bottom base and a track system because I want to add kind of like a fence all the way around to kind of match the balcony that's down below. But I kind of went small, large, so a miniature of that stature can shoot through the smaller ones, and the taller ones can shoot over top of the big ones. So I kind of, and it's going to give more of a kind of a castle feel to it, really. And then, of course, I got to put the wooden planks all the way around. So before you get too far with the fencing, which I started getting crazy on it because I was excited about doing it, you should do the floor first. Because it's harder to get in there and measure it once you put that fence up. And then I gave it another framing all the way around of balsa wood to just kind of more of just a decorative look to it. And I use that track system. So I got one piece of balsa wood in the center, and I got all my little nibbly bits there, which adds like there's timbers underneath, so it adds a little design to it, but also it's helps you put the pieces together. And this is what I talk about adding balsa wood in between them. And if you don't do that, and I've done that in the past, sometimes it's harder to connect them because they kind of fall between the two pieces. But if you add that balsa wood between the two nibbly bits there, it actually slides on really nice. So this worked out really great. And then I'm just showing you again, back to craft paint again, covering it, sealing it. And then we're all done here. This is all ready for our primer colors. Again, building and painting in stages. Before we can put the walkway on the inside of that tower, we have to paint it, right? Because once we put the walkway in there, I can't get back in there to paint. There's no way I can get my brushes in there. So I have to paint it at this stage. And I already went through all the colors, even though I'm showing you them all again. It's the same base colors I use for the other parts. All right, so as I was doing that, I also did the thatched roof, just so you know. Again, it was coming along with us. I didn't mention that. But I did add some sand golem once on there. You can see it makes it a nicer, brighter color to the floor. And I added some to the thatched roof. And this basilic yellow. It's kind of for the just to add more vibrance to the thatched roof. Malignant green, that's kind of a grungy color. It's near the ocean, so there would be a lot of algae and stuff like that. So I added a little bit of that grunge in there. So adding a little more details. Hardened leather, some of the timbers or the framing around it, just to offset the color so it doesn't look like it's all the same colors. So you got different colors going on there. So I did all that before I even went into the staircase at all. I kind of wanted to get that all completed. So I went back and I added that sand golem to everything. So as far as the staircases go, I didn't glue it into there quite yet. What I want to do is kind of figure out how I'm going to get it out to the very top, wrap it around the entranceway, but still make the walkway so you can shoot through the slots. I didn't want them halfway up a staircase or something like that. But I had to figure out how to fit those stairs in there. So this is kind of what I came up with. And I kept it separate because I'm going to paint it separate before I stick it in there. Once I've done completing all the paint job and I'm happy with the height, you can see I got different components leading up. There's 2 levels of stairs, and then this is the tippy top there, right to the top. And it looks like a chair, but actually it's sealed off. It makes sense once you put the top on because you can't see past it, right? It doesn't look like there's a gap there. So it's just more of just a aesthetic look. And then I seal it in with the black craft paint. As usual, we're going on our steps again, and I'm going to have to do all the priming colors on there again. We're going to go through that again, all the priming, and you can see I've completed all that. And I added some sand golem and hardened leather, and I added a little bit like a fence to the walkway. So again, miniatures don't fall out as you're putting them up the staircase. And we're going to take care of that. So now it's all done. It's all looking good. It matches everything else. We finally glue it in. And so I use my tacky glue and just glue it in. So you can access the opening there on the doorway to move miniatures to the bottom. But you can easily get them up the staircase here with your hand in there. I measured it with my hand. So my fat fingers in there, it fits pretty good. But that's why I wanted to make it playable, right? So you have to be able to get your hand in there. But that's why I cut it in half. So, you don't want to go down a really large tower. You wouldn't be able to. So then the next level, and this will add more strength to it as well, is adding another floor, the main floor, and then essentially repeating what we did down below. I have already cut all the pieces because I figured out the entire lengths at the same time, and I cut them all out at the same time. So it'll be a little quicker to do the second half because I've kind of figured out everything out on the first half, how to do it. And I'm just going to duplicate it on here and essentially build it the same way. Same thing, paper on the inside and texture on the outside, exactly the same as the bottom. Oh, just by the way, to cut that top out, I just turned that upside down and traced it, to be honest, onto the dollar store form board and just cut it out so that it fit perfectly on there, right? I just used itself to trace so I can get the exact, if I was off by a little bit, whatever, it would match. Cut the hole in the bottom for the staircase, and then kind of figure out how I'm going to get the staircase up this side. But we've got to frame everything out as same as, like I said, this is very repetitive to the one below. We're essentially going to do all the same steps. I added it in there just so you see how I did it again. I mean, I probably could have cut this part of the video out because it's just duplication. But I just wanted to show you the whole process as I went along. All right, so I've finished framing the inside, same as the bottom. And we're trusty black craft paint again. So I don't know how many different layers of paint I went over and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but it worked good. It got done what I needed to, and I couldn't do it all at once. You do it at different stages. The reason why you got to do the floor first is, again, if you put those boards down, you don't want to be able to see white underneath it. It's better if it's black. And put the planks down next. And I put all my stones in there. Went through a lot of foam stones in this project. And then I measured out, same thing, traced the top. And this is for the very top of the tower where the light's going to be, our fire up the very top. So I kind of measured that out already as I was going along here. It's a lot easier to trace it while it's loose like this, right? So that's why I did it that way. Same thing on the bottom. I kind of made it a little heftier with a little bit bigger pieces. So it's more of an aesthetic look to the actual hole. I decided to go with thicker balsa wood to separate the two tower pieces together. And I kind of carried that over actually up to the top. And this is again showing you adding the balsa wood in between these bits. because you can put it at an angle and it gets caught, so it's really important to do that. I don't know why I didn't do that in the past. It's so much better that way. It slides on so much easier. And time to make a few doors. This is simple coffee stir sticks. I got some little jewelry rings there as handles. And I got one that's leading the hatch leading from the bottom to the top, and one's just a doorway that get into the main tower. So I figured I'd build them as I was going along here. So when I prime and paint, I got the doors done at the same time. I can just glue them in place. So we're done the doors. We're done fabricating that part. And again, back to the black craft paint. And going to another layer of paint again. And sealing everything in. So I was a little quicker building my staircase the second time around because I had experience with my first one. And I just started slapping it together. You have to go in there and measure it first to make sure it fits. And then once you get to this basic stage, then you can start rapidly building the rest of it up, as I did here. I think my second staircase is a lot better than my first staircase, only because I just got better at doing it. But like I said, experience from the first time. I figured out how to do it the second time pretty quickly. So that's my next component that goes up on the wall there. And then the last piece is right there. It's another little chair. And that's the very top that leads into the very tippy top of the entire tower where the fire is going to be. So then I have to paint all this. I prime those stairs in black. And then I'm going to do all my undertones as I always do on everything. And paint everything all at once. The doors, the stairs, the tower piece. I know this is probably getting repetitive because I've done this at least 7 or 8 times already. But I just want to emphasize the importance of doing it in stages like this. It's just a lot easier, and that way you make sure everything is painted on the inside before you start gluing staircases and all sorts of stuff inside where you just can't get back at it. So you have to paint them in certain levels. And of course you have to let it dry before you can start moving on to the next stage. That's why this took so long to do this. It was the on and off of the painting of the stages of each piece. So tacky glue, glued it in place. Actually, you can still see the glue in there. I got it finagled in it to make sure it fits solid. Glued the doors on so that you can see one's kind of like a hatch to the bottom there, and I kind of changed the design of the door a little bit, and then one's the actual, and I left it open like that so you can easily play your minis on that bottom floor. So this is all completed. We're getting close. We're going to the last section, which is the very top. So I started framing it out as I did with the other ones with some balsa wood. Like I said, I went with a little bit more chunky, just so it overlaps a little bit because I have to have those nibs to it. So this is a piece I got from 2 Adepticons ago. It was in a Mantic terrain box, and I was always wondering what I was going to do with it. Looks like the beacons from Lord of the Rings, but I thought it would be very appropriate for the top of this lighthouse, as they used wood and oil and to burn on top of a tower. So I said, this is the perfect time to use this. And I like the way the fire is flowing on it. It was pre-made. It's perfect. Now, I could have made this with foam blocks, made a base like I have here, and kind of carved the fire out of foam. It is possible. I could have done it that way. But since I had this already, why not? I just figured out, this is a good time to use it. It'll fit nicely in here, and it'll look great. So I made it a little box because I want it to be a little bit taller. Now that box I'm going to cover in stone. I want it to be raised. Instead of doing planks, though, on this base, I'm going to use egg cartons. I didn't mention that in the supply list at the very beginning, but I kind of made this decision at the very end to go with egg cartons because it would make sense. There's a giant fire on top of it. You wouldn't want it to have too wooden of a structure. If anything falls over, it would fall into stones. So I kind of did a lot of stone work up at the very top because I thought it would make more sense. The examples I saw, they didn't actually even have any wooden framing at the top at all. It was just all stone, which does make sense. You don't want to light your hole on fire with all the woodwork, right? So But anyways, I wanted to add as much stone element to the top as I can to make it a little more believable. This is where we're stretching history a little bit here for a more aesthetic look to it, to make it look a little more interesting. You know, I might say it has a little bit maybe more of a fantasy feel on the very tippy top. But it's a lot more interesting, and they would have had something similar. There's no examples that I could find for it, besides it just being a flat top with wood on top that they put up there. So I made kind of like this, kind of a castle top to it. And like I said, you can shoot from the top there. You can put your miniatures up there. And this is really just a design I decided to go with. It. I thought it would be more appropriate for the rest. I already added kind of that castle feel to the bottom base of the whole thing, and I really like the overall design. I think it looks interesting. So I had to make another like roof hatch. This is and I had to glue that in place there. Of course, I'm gonna have to paint it before I glue it in place, but I had to build that as I went along. So let's do some black craft paint and seal her in again. So I even covered the fire with it, all of the black craft paint with everything. So it's just one piece sealed in. It always looks weird when you have all sorts of multi-things glued together, but once you cover it all in craft, but it's like it brings everything together. And then we're going to go through the colors again. I'm not going to bother reading them off. We know which ones they are, just kind of pointing it out. I did add some hardened leather to some of the wood framing work that gives us a little more interesting. But I didn't show the painting technique here. I've done, if you look at the Dock Ferry, I did spend a lot of time on showing you how to add light effects with craft paint and other miniature paints. And, you know, these are, like, I've seen some people do some light techniques that are pretty amazing. But I think these are convincing and do what we need to do here. So I have dynamic yellow there. There's a mummy robe. There's a lava orange, dragon red, pure red. Those are all army painter colors to add to sell my story. I think that's burning orc. That's another. That's a fanatic one. So it's a little bit of a brighter orange, and then more Pueblo. And there's cardinal red and apple red are the two versions for full cart. So I kind of did a whole bunch of reds and oranges and yellows to sell this. And all you gotta really remember, the concept is that the yellow is the first thing that the light hits, and it gets redder as it goes further away. That's why the fire is, you know, brightest in the center, and it kind of more red on the end. So I'm just kind of showing you the overall finished paint job here on this tower. I'm pretty happy with that. Definitely good enough for what I need, and at a distance it does look like the top of the lighthouse is lit up, and that was the main purpose of painting it that way. Now I definitely have considered going ahead and doing a video where I just do that, and let me know if you're interested in me doing something like that for you guys. So that's mummy robe, and that was Agrax Earth Shader, some more malignant green. We're going to work on the base. So yeah, we're going to go all the way back to the bottom, and we haven't done a final paint job down there because I wanted to have ocean effects down there, water effects. So we got all sorts of different West Windshield blue. I'm knocking my paints over here. I got electric blue. I got ultramarine blue. And then there was a speed paint, a really darker blue. That I like to use for all sorts of things. Heartland blue. That one's really good it's a really deep blue. So you kind of work your deep blue to the edges, and then work your lightest as you get further to the rocks. And it's a smaller edge, but this is kind of how I did it. And I just kind of dry brush the lighter blues on there, so you got different tones of blue going on there. And I go right up onto the rocks, because the water's splashing right up onto the rocks. And then we're going to use that resin that I usually use. I'll show you here in a minute here. This Art Minds. Got from Michaels. I love this stuff. Works great. And you don't have to like bury it in resin. Just pour a little bit and brush it on. And then it'll sell it. And you've seen in all the water pieces I've done so far, you can see it just really adds a vibrance to it. It really works great. and gives me the effect I wanted. Now, the only thing missing from here is the crashing white caps. So that's the last stage we're going to do. Once this resin was dried, so I had to let it sit for a day and let it dry. And it just gives it a wet look, like there's water there. It really sells the ocean feel to it. And then we're going to move on to we're going to do some titanium white craft paint, folk art craft paint. And we're going to hit all the edges. I'm going to hit up on the rocks. And that's just going to give it that crashing water look to the stones. But we had a good start off with our resin and our different blue tones down there to really sell all the water effect. And that's our multi-surface titanium white, I said. Yep. And just showing you, we're going to hit all that. So I just kind of like dry brushed it on top, to be honest, just to get some of the raised edges and then some up on the rocks. So let's look at the finished product on the table. So we'll stop by the other piece that we built for the Trey Parker table, which is the tavern. And that's the first piece I built. And then the second is the lighthouse. And of course, those other buildings are not part of this overall. And I'm going to actually build the game board too. But those will be done in future episodes. But the lighthouse was a next component I thought was really important to build for this whole project. So it looks like we got the pirates have taken this town, or this port, and we have the English coming in to recapture it. So that's kind of the situation that's going on here. I love that the merchants are just, selling their stuff, and there's a giant raging battle going on behind them. All right, don't ignore those guys. They're just having a good time there. All right, so this is the final product. You can see with the water effects, the thatched roof. We're going to take that off just to show you all the different components again. You can play right into that little house there. And I do want to build some other details for the insides of some of these buildings, but that again will have to be a future episode. But I just wanted to show you the entire... And we kind of looked at it already at the beginning, but I kind of wanted to show you the whole game board as well. And I'm going to pull it apart and put it back together again. Really adding all those extra pieces on there makes it a little easier to put them together. I had these miniatures light effects from that ship I built, so I figured they would be appropriate for the tower. And then just showing you all the different levels, which we just finished building. So I'm really happy how this turned out. Came out great. The pieces go together really nicely, and everything was really good here. I dropped a mini down here. But just a little bit more of that water effect you can see there. And we're just going to assemble this all back together again. So that's pretty much it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this project. I know it's a longer episode and there were some repetitive parts to it, but I really appreciate you coming and stopping by and watching it. And next one, I'm not sure which one I'm going to do. I haven't decided if I'm going to do the warehouse next, or if I want to kind of have this hankering about doing the stone fort with a prison in it. I just thought that would be a really cool scenario, trying to get your pirates out of the stone prison. So that might be the next project. All right, that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.